Who? It's Niall Ashley. Welcome to another episode of the Mainframe community from Mainframe Society. We're joined today by a very special guest who is actually in the educational sort of sector rather than the mainframe industry as such. Although, as our viewers will find out later, this is kind of a bit of a blurry line. You know, these kind of two spaces can fuse together quite seamlessly. So I guess without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest, Daniel Hulatt. So Dan, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell the audience a bit about who you are.
Well, thank you for having me. So my name's Daniel Hulatt. I work at Bedford College, part of a much larger group. And I guess you would say that as an educator, I've had a variety of experiences that I try and bring in. So I've worked in industries. I've been very fortunate. In 2013, I was one of the first groups of students to attend GSE, the UK event at Whittlebury Hall. Thanks to Herb and the University of Bedfordshire and her various sponsors. So
Yeah.
I'd all ties in. And along the way, I just try and bring as many opportunities and experiences from all sorts of places. But I've been teaching now for 8 years. And now I support my students in whatever they want to do, including GSE.
Brilliant. And I think that's such an interesting point, isn't it? That you try to bring in all these experiences, and that's, I think, what makes education so much better, so much more kind of digestible. Is tying things down kind of to a context, right? You know, it's all well and good learning about art in isolation, but when you can kind of see the industry, see the kind of the nature of that. The same within the mainframe industry. It's all well and good learning about RACF or ZOS, but sometimes it's nice to tie that in, have people you can allocate, you can associate those memories with, and yeah.
100%. From my own experience in the classroom, students will tell you quite openly that what's the point of being here if I can read it in a textbook?
Yeah.
It's particularly in a world where everything could be online in various formats. And so I very much see my position as making it accessible and telling those stories to make it real and help them ultimately to understand the world around them and how what they're learning can interact with that.
And interestingly, your first time attending the GSE UK region event, you said 2013.
That's correct.
9 years before I even joined the committee.
Amazing.
So how has it been sort of maybe coming full circle, coming back to it and seeing a lot of the same faces, but also a lot of different ones, and maybe coming back, once as an educatee and now as the educator.
I think for me, it's definitely been a full circle moment. It's been almost surreal insofar as you walk back into that room and you're greeted by people who remember you going. And that's not to say I don't remember the event, but as a young individual, there's so much to take in and there's so much to learn. I mean, we're talking back when GSE didn't have the 101 stream. And so we were thrown into these conversations and, back then, today, that embracing of the fact we want to answer those questions, we want to support this pipeline of individuals with a curiosity, that hasn't changed at all. It's amazing to see a community that is so open to students and to, to share a more personal experience, that time back in 2013, I went to that event not long having had surgery, and there were no end of support and understanding. If I got fatigued, right, let's find a chair for you. If you're going to sit in this room and we'll explain, that person sat next to you is more than happy to make sure you get a copy of their notes as well. And that community is amazing.
It's fascinating as well, isn't it? That this is obviously we're kind of a podcast that focuses on community, and like you say, sometimes it's not just about the education when you come to these events. It's not just about the learning, but the kind of the camaraderie and the kind of the feelings, feeling safe and comfortable and happy, yes, you're learning, maybe you're meeting new people, but you shouldn't do it under duress, So it's
No,
nice that was
absolutely. It sounds disrespectful to say, but when I tell my students about it, when I present them with this opportunity, I am quite open, and I tell them that they might only learn one thing in every session. They might come away feeling really tired and burnt out, but that in a month's time they'll figure out what they took away from it.
Yeah.
Um, and that doesn't mean they won't get something from it. It just means that actually for a young person, there's so much to embrace.
Almost too much sometimes.
I don't think it is though, because it's one of those things that there aren't these opportunities for young people in the same way. And without going down the rabbit hole of that whole debate about funding of sports and things for young people, actually to have a community that is so willing to support. I mean, you yourself have spoken to my students at the college, and actually for the sake of us then saying, well, here's a technology we don't often talk about, and here's how it impacts your daily life. The students don't realize how much the mainframe is in their lives.
Yeah.
Um, Simple things like telling them that their banks use it.
Yeah.
And being able to explain that actually that delay in processing comes from this part of the system. Or being able to explain how these large-scale warehouses operate and how potentially transactions are used to help manage those systems. And so to find a community so open and with so much opportunity is really quite a different experience for students. And so, yeah, I'm always willing to accept that there might be a lot to take on board, but I don't think I've ever come across a student, and my own experience is the same. I've never once thought there's too much. It's just a case of let me take it on board.
And sometimes it's like these things can age like a fine wine. Sometimes you have to sort of, almost let the knowledge stew. You have to maybe kind of ponder upon it to really get the full value. It's sometimes you go, oh, I really didn't understand that, but I sort of maybe tenuously was able to grasp certain aspects. You do a little bit of research, you maybe reach out to the contacts you made at the conference, and eventually it all kind of clicks.
Definitely. Without oversimplifying it, it's like a dot-to-dot puzzle you do as a kid, isn't it? Knowledge isn't any one thing. It's the same when I teach. I don't have time to go into depth on any one subject, but if I can show them a thread that connects everything, then it allows their knowledge to start, or give them a starting point, but then says, okay, well, what do you want to delve into? And eventually they'll wrap back around to the same topics.
Yeah. And I think also something that I found really humbling about this industry and this, say GSE UK as a conference is, you say 2013 attended and there wasn't a 101 stream, or there wasn't the kind of content maybe at the right level for necessarily for people kind of, students at that level. So we've taken your feedback on board and, the feedback of your peers, and we've then tied that in, and through successive generations, you've got students who Herb taught later, so like Ricky West, Elitza Popova, Lucas Yaks, and then now that they've kind of all been there, and we've learned every time we've taken the feedback on, and we've innovated, we've iterated. Now we've got these 101 and 102 streams. They fall under the Waves kind of umbrella, and everything's changed, and yet it's changed for the better. Like, we've evolved to support the educators and the educatees.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when Herb and yourself first approached me to bring my own students to the event. Quite a call out of the blue, if I'm honest, but an amazing opportunity. And to hear about how it had changed, how it had adapted, and even now, you accepted, and Herb and the community accepted, that actually there's an adaptation to happen for under 18-year-olds. And to have a community say, well, what can we do? How can we support your students better? Simple things like I know it sounds ridiculous, but when we took our first batch of students, there were some vendors giving out alcohol as a freebie. And actually, the moment they understood that there were under 18s there, they went out and bought sweets or something else to offer them. And, that's when I take students to other events, you don't get that level of, I wouldn't say compassion, you get compassion. Reactivity and that willingness to adapt, to accept that we need to embrace this evolving environment.
Yeah. So with all this said, obviously we've kind of we've talked quite a lot about this one maybe specific kind of organization, this conference, but maybe more holistically, what would you say? So when you think of the word community, what does that word mean to you? What does it evoke in you?
I think to me, it's family. I've been very privileged to grow up around these events. So one of my student jobs was to support in running security events for the film and television industry. I've been very fortunate in attending events in the Netherlands for education, and speaking to ministers in Europe about community and topics like excellence. And the one thing they all have in common is that it feels like a family tied together with a subject. So I'm part of an archery club. I've been part of an archery club for 16 years, and I don't see them as anything other than family. Yes, I will at times only speak archery to them, but it's the same with World Skills UK. If I go to one of their events, I'm part of their community of practice, where educators and individuals from industry will come together and talk about how to support students and what we can do to improve that.
Yeah.
And again, it's one topic that unites us all. We all want to do better for our students. With GSE, its Mainframe is the thread.
Yeah.
But the community is very much family. I walked into GSE 2 years ago now, having not been there since 2013, and I was greeted by Mark, who remembered me. I was greeted by vendors who remembered me. I will admit to not remembering them, not in the same way, but where else can you go but a community of like-minded individuals who share a passion for a subject? And ultimately in today's world, it can feel very isolating for a young person. If you think back to your student days, if I think back to my student days, the internet wasn't the same as it was now.
No.
There wasn't podcasts. There wasn't, to a certain extent, there wasn't YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I can't imagine what it's like now, but I do know that is the one thing that ties communities together. It's that single desire to help each other, to be there for each other. I know if I'm struggling with a subject, I can call on you for some advice, for example, in the same way that we're having this conversation now, to share my experience or your experience.
So obviously you touched upon the kind of archery. Are there any other community groups that you are currently a part of, or maybe have previously been a part of, that you see in the same way, you see them as like a family, or kind of very strong kind of bond?
So archery is a strong one for me. Strangely enough, they were who got me into teaching.
Really?
When they supported me in my coaching qualifications. Beyond that, though, I would say all of my past lecturers who have supported me are a type of community. They're my mentors.
Yeah.
And I'm very privileged that today I am still working with all of those people. My security teacher from college is the head of department who I work closely with at a different site. My lecturer, Herb, he's someone I work with on the Mainframe stuff.
Yeah.
World Skills is another one that I'm very passionate about. They've supported me in becoming a better educator. And I'm hoping, I know you and I have talked about and the Mainframe Society are talking about developing competitions for mainframes, a way of developing that pipeline and a chance to experience something that students don't experience. So I would go so far as to say my workplace is a community.
Absolutely.
Everyone I work with or interact with is a type of community, and I can't say I've ever not felt that way. Even my friends were a community, albeit those conversations are less focused than, say, the ones related to work.
I think the world skills sort of, obviously I worked in engineering before, and sort of during my time in kind of the apprenticeship, we saw a lot of world skills events, and I have peers who, friends who still kind of partake in that space. And I think what's lovely is that even though that's maybe a different community in the regard of engineering, and we're more IT kind of, the sort of computer science side of things, that common organization means that I could then introduce you to this friend, and vice versa.
Definitely.
And then we can look to make like you say, hopefully make a syllabus of maybe world skills kind of codeathons or datathons or hackathons or something to that effect, because there should be these things that, like you say, that tie people together. And then you've got students from all across the UK, and they all say, we've all done this, we've all partaken, and we've made connections, we made friends.
Do you want to know the one thing that really opened my eyes to a community? And GSE did it. I know that Waves as a topic do something similar. World Skills do it. I was invited, very privileged to be invited, to talk to the education ministers in the Netherlands about a Centre of Excellence programme and the things that I had learned in the UK from that. And at the end of that, to thank the other educators that came along, because there was me and a group of 8 educators, we got given 2 badges. Simple things, mean nothing to most people. A Team UK, which is only given to Team UK members, and a Team Netherlands badge. And they are pride and place on my lanyard at work. And when I've attended GSE events, you get a badge. It doesn't mean the badge is the community, but it's what that represents. I see it with students all the time. They'll wear a pin badge for a film or TV show because they're looking for that community. Community is being able to identify someone that you can go to and know you can talk to someone about it, which is what you've said.
I mean, even when I got the train to a conference in Birmingham, there was someone who saw me, playing on a Steam Deck, and then I saw him sit opposite me at the table on the train, and he took his bag off, and I saw on his bag those pin badges of like Star Wars and video game stuff, and immediately I knew that we had something in common. And I know exactly what you mean, in that a pin badge is so small and innocuous, and yet in a way, to those who know what they're looking for and can recognize it, it's almost like a bat signal. It's like, I know that you and I have something in common,
and you feel like you're not just you in the world.
Exactly.
All of a sudden you feel connected, even though you may choose not to speak to that individual. You know that there's someone else that knows what you know, or someone else that can share in your passions.
You feel seen and understood, like you say, not necessarily with it by saying anything, but just to have that almost principle.
Definitely. Definitely.
So cheers, Kelly. I'm gonna get that one out. So what maybe similarities and differences have you noticed from maybe Archery and these other communities that you talked about, compared to the Mainframe community, or maybe the guide share community?
Okay, so I think for me, let's start with the similarities.
Sure.
Because I think the one thing they share, we've mentioned in spades, is passion.
Yes.
And they've got a common interest across the board. I think the other thing is that acceptance that no one's perfect. There is genuinely a belief that the only way to learn is to ask questions. The only way to learn is to fail spectacularly. As an example, a couple of years ago during COVID, during my own studies, I wanted to try a different bow style, and I made a complete mess of it. And I'd been ridiculing archers of this bow style in the way that anyone who knows someone well would. But within that, there's this understanding that actually that's how you learn, and let's work together. And they'll ridicule me back, that
Healthily.
yeah, healthily. And actually, that's what the similarities are. GSE, Waves, the spring event, they have this connection that allows you to ask what otherwise might be considered, in your brain at least, a stupid question.
Yeah.
You are in a room full of people that are probably thinking the exact same question. I remember in 2013 being really scared to ask the question, what does MIPS stand for? And then the moment I think I spoke to the guys from Barclays, and I just said, actually, what's this? And we spoke about it. They talked to me about it. It helped me connect everything together. And then we shared a bit of a joke and a laugh of, actually, it was there on my notes. I just hadn't picked up on it. And so I think that's what they share. They share that willingness to learn from each other, to share experiences. I appreciate one of the differences is in archery, I can talk about Team GB to someone who I know is going for Team GB, whereas in GSE, I might not always get the answer I'm looking for because of security or NDAs or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the differences, that topic doesn't always lend itself to a detailed answer that might satisfy a curious brain. But I do think the similarity comes in that within reason, there's an understanding that we'll do what we can to explain it. We'll do what we can to support you. And if we can't, we'll explain why we can't.
Yeah.
And help you understand what those limitations are.
So limitations, kind of explanations, this is something that's obviously core to the educational kind of, I guess, the development, to the milestones of you've got to sort of sometimes, like you say, fail to learn and by learning from your mistakes, you make much more progress than you would by succeeding first time.
100%.
So was GSE UK kind of a catalyst for your decision to maybe work in the educational kind of space, or was that more of a an eye-opening opportunity, but it wasn't the reason you went into that industry?
I think that's a really interesting question personally, because I think if I look back at my journey, there's always been an unconscious desire there. But yes, I think it's helped because, so for example, when I was at college, prior to being offered this opportunity to attend, I was running revision sessions for my peers on subjects that they were struggling with. So I think there's always been that there, but I think where it opened doors was that actually in 2012, 2013, I think it was, I was approached by a lecturer who didn't just support me, but believed in me enough to say, why don't you set up this student group? I'll help you, but I've got this opportunity. We need a student group to make it official. And actually, that group's still running. That group's still attending GSE. And I wasn't alone in setting that up, but that belief that came from that community that actually, you know what, there's an opportunity here, and there's an opportunity you hadn't considered. I think, was it the only thing? No. I think the real trigger was a combination of communities saying the same thing. And after a point, you start to think, well, I keep ignoring them. Am I missing something here? But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel right and almost poetic that actually I've come full circle and now I'm supporting students to go to the same events, to go to the same opportunities and to ask the same questions.
Yeah.
Last year, a student came back and I kid you not, the question was, what's a MIP? I didn't feel confident to understand to ask the question. And actually, there's a poetic nature to that
Yeah.
in my own mind, because actually, yeah, all right, it would have been lovely if they'd have asked the question while they were there, but actually they still asked the question
Yeah.
and they were still curious enough.
Learning regardless as to the environment is the important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And what has between world skills and this, you talk about learning through failure, but actually the biggest takeaway from both those experiences is I have made failure a core part of my assessment.
Yeah.
They cannot achieve high grades without first failing and then reflecting on it. And that's really the biggest thing from GSE that's inspired, because actually that asking questions of how do we do this better? You've asked the question years ago when we first started going, how can we support you better?
Mm.
That's learning, isn't it? That's developing.
That's it. And we all, all of us who've been on this podcast, all of us who, sort of care about community and care about education, including obviously your colleagues as well. We all want to see that, we want to see those kind of learnings and those almost mini evolutions, as and when possible. But obviously there are, unfortunately, sometimes maybe hurdles, certain changes we can't make, whether it's for financial reasons or any other reason. So those kind of things aren't uncommon. And I guess that might maybe lead to the next question then, is there something, when we have these issues, they can be frustrating, but is there something that's kept you around in this industry? Is there something that's made you, say this is, through thick or thin, this is where I'm staying? Because obviously
education.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're asking is what my students would call my why, my reason. I think for me there's multiple things. For me, the thing that I wake up for in the morning is when I'm in that classroom and I see the moment a student gets it
Mm-hmm.
or it clicks. I go running and you get that natural high.
Mm.
And it's the same kind of thing in a weird kind of way, that knowledge that actually in that moment that student has taken a subject and presented it back to you in a way you'd never thought about. I challenge them all the time to find the questions I don't know the answer to.
And they challenge you back.
Yeah, because that's what it is. That's, if we're talking community, community challenges community, doesn't it? That's how you grow. In terms of what keeps me around, why am I in this for life? That's, I guess you have your moments in any industry. But yes, I do see myself developing. At the moment, I am working with a fantastic team, and my role now is to focus on the team element and build that into something incredible.
Yeah.
And actually, I want us to be a place where students know that they're going to get opportunities. I don't know whether that's answered your question.
No, absolutely. I think, like you say, sometimes there are going to be hurdles, but ultimately, like you say, it's the catharsis of knowing how you supported people and the milestones that they've hit, and then, like you say, that the fact that they can challenge you back, and it's actually an enjoyable experience.
I think the other side, just now you've reflected on that, would be that actually a lot of my students that come to me in my department have had very mixed experiences with education. And again, that knowledge that actually you're helping them to find something to fall in love with.
Yeah.
That ties in with that as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Sometimes we can, I know for me personally, I can love the subject, hate the educational experience, maybe because of the way it was delivered, the way that the curriculum expects it to be taught. It's not that I don't enjoy computer science, but my A-level results would probably imply I didn't enjoy it, or I didn't, kind of have that kind of connection to it. And the same with, DT. I love making things. I love taking things apart, fixing them, improving the efficiency. But if you look at my maybe my grades, again, they're not necessarily indicative of that, because there was a lot of theory which just went in one ear out the other. And actually when it comes to practicals, I was getting, A's and A stars.
Yeah, absolutely.
They weren't worth the grades.
And that's what it should be about. I just yesterday said to a class, you know what, we're going to ask you to present work, but actually the example I gave was in a website development unit, you're going to be asked to develop a website, but actually I already know that some of you support a sports club with their website.
Yeah.
So why would we not let you use that for what you're doing for us? Because you're going to enjoy it more if we adapt to you.
Exactly. And cut to the chase, rather than doing the same thing twice, just take the thing that's already proven,
Definitely.
No point making more work for someone if they've already proven themselves.
Definitely.
I think there's a lot of that in, when I was doing my apprenticeship, with Airbus, there was a lot of students who had really similar level 3s. There was a lot of overlap between, some mechanical engineering and, aeronautical, or automotive and aeronautical. And yet they were told a lot of modules they couldn't kind of sign off. And I think actually, let's just make their life easier. Don't waste their time. Either give them something better, more challenging to do, or just say, look, you've earned a break, you've done it.
Absolutely. This debate happens with me and the work placement team all the time, where students are meant to do work placement. We're very lucky, but when in some scenarios, they're not allowed to count paid work placement because it doesn't demonstrate real world working skills. It has to be relevant to the IT industry. And the argument I make all the time is a student who works at a shop, for example, they're getting paid for their experience. But ultimately, if we say hypothetically, based on government data, that 80 to 90% of all IT jobs have a client-facing role, how is that not relevant?
There you go.
And this is the very argument that keeps me coming back to work.
But I think that's really nice that you've been receptive to, the students and what they're what they're doing, what they need, what they want. And I think, we should all be a bit more receptive to each other's kind of needs or feedback, and I think maybe the world might be a bit more of an enjoyable place for everyone if we were all a little bit more
Definitely
understanding.
I mean, for me, it's off the back of the experiences. It's one thing bringing the students to these events; they get a lot, but one of the limitations is obviously how many people can you fit in a hotel? How many people can you fit in a conference room? How much money do we have to spend on it?
Yeah.
And actually, with the support from the Mainframe Society, with the support from Vitaly, yourself, Niall, and everyone else, by being able to bring that experience back into my environment and bring people back to see what the students are doing, it makes a much more compassionate kind of industry. So you've seen, we've scaled it up last year at Bedford. I don't know how we're going to scale it up in March again this year, but the plan is to have a much better mix of students presenting to industry as well, where students are researching topics, giving them a chance to almost treat it like an interview.
Yeah, sell themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And take the pressure of an interview away and introduce a moment where you're talking about something you're passionate about and the industry asks you questions.
Yeah. I think that's lovely. I know we took a lot of the feedback on board from there's myself, Hulatt, and Ben, who attended the Student Development Day last year, and we took a lot of feedback on board, and I know that all of us are really interested to see how we can help more, or help differently next year. But I think that was a remarkable achievement what you guys at the college had sort of pulled off, and I think I'd love to see more colleges doing that sort of thing, more educational establishments doing that. Having these days where the students can present to, maybe industry professionals and vice versa, because there's a lot to learn from both directions. I mean, I've not been in the educational industry, the educational space for quite some time. I think I left sixth form in, I don't know what it was, 2017. I left the college with Airbus. I was doing this kind of apprenticeship 2020, and that's it. So the only time I've been back to any education establishment has been
But this is an ongoing debate, though, isn't it? Have you left? Because in that time, you may not have been in the classroom, but you have learned new skills on a cert. You have mentored someone.
Yeah.
And we both know from experience that a mentorship relationship is two-way.
Yeah.
I get as much from my mentees as they do from me. So the question is, have you left education, or has your education adapted to suit what you prefer and how you best engage with the world around you? And that's really my mission. Actually, we've got a factory style model of education in some scenarios if you really want to delve into that debate, but I guarantee you're going to be debating with a lecturer for a long time. And we're saying that prepares them for the world of work, but does it? Actually, we've got to look at those other skills beyond that, which is what this development day is about. It's that, how do I sell myself? Ultimately, for me, it's different to you. Other skills that we nurture that no one thinks about. A behavior management book for a teacher will say, don't negotiate with your students. And it's like reading a book for high-level negotiations. Don't negotiate with people you're not willing to...
Don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, I was trying not to say it. I don't know what limits there are on a podcast. But actually, if you enter the modern world of work, you've got to negotiate a contract.
Pay rises.
You've got to negotiate what your worth is to the company. So why shouldn't that start with simple things like, do you want the windows open?
Yeah.
Or do you want the heating turned up?
Yeah.
I might not be comfortable, but as a class, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's negotiate. If one person wants it 10 degrees hotter and one person wants it 10 degrees colder, right, let's make it 5. Let's meet in the middle. And that's what that development day is about. Let's let the students pick.
Yeah.
And actually, the data we've got from that, from last year, tells me what was popular and what we need to do more of.
And actually, it's interesting because we take feedback on board for the Waves events. And like you said, sometimes we're trying to, move away from what agenda do we want to deliver to the students and what agenda the students maybe want from us. And so we're taking a lot of similar feedback on board. Your a lot of your students from the kind of Bedford College Group, they attended the last 2 GSE UK events, Guide Share, and they some of them attended the last Waves Spring event that was hosted at Barclays. And I think, we've obviously taken a lot of the feedback on board, like I say, but it's interesting you made the point. Forgive me if I rephrase it slightly or paraphrase. Okay. You basically said, education, have I left education, or has education maybe evolved? And I think that's a very valid point. Maybe these students see it as a day out from the classroom. They see it as like a field trip or something, but it's still educational. It's just a different form. We might not be our college or a university, but that doesn't mean we aren't providing value to the students from an educational perspective.
Definitely. And I mean, if we talk about, I hate the phrase, but in college we call it value added. This look at what they could have achieved based on entry requirements and what they end up achieving and what the difference between that is. But if we were to approach it slightly differently, let's look at those groups of students that went to GSE. Let's look at those groups of students that the Mainframe Society supported with sponsorship to the Waves event in spring at Barclays. Out of those, I forget the numbers, but
8 or 10 or something.
I think we had 8 last year.
Yeah,
maybe slightly less, maybe 6. Of those, one is now working for Vodhali. One is working for Tess. We've got another student who is inspired to 3D print the mainframes, and
this is as student ambassador.
We've got students that have talked about it in the classroom to the point where IBM have sponsored and granted us access to processors that we now display and can talk about in the classroom so that we can bring it to more students. And if we look at that impact slightly differently, all of a sudden, out of the 6 or 8 or whatever number. I mean, we've had one student that came away from GSE in the first year. They were like, no, this isn't the industry for me. And that's still learning.
Yeah.
All the rest, I've read assignments where they've talked about it. I've been in classrooms where they're talking about it. I've heard them talking about job applications and internships. And one of our students was very lucky enough to see the quantum facilities at IBM over the summer. All of a sudden, this education that's supposed to be in the classroom has evolved beyond anything that any of us could dream.
Yeah. And the value hasn't been added necessarily to the kind of maybe the metrics that people look at, grades or attendance, but actually enthusiasm isn't a kind of unquantifiable metric, but it is one nonetheless, and they are enthused, aren't they?
But if we talk about the impact on your industry, all of a sudden we've got almost 6 people immediately that know they want to work in that industry.
Talent pipeline.
Yeah. And that's 6 people in the future who potentially, hopefully, will be leading the way in innovation in the industry.
I can't wait for that. That's what I'm looking forward
too.
to. Yeah. So I guess speaking of mainframe technologies, and obviously you said some of your students have written about mainframes or guide share in their kind of their essays. What is there any technology that maybe in particular interests you from this industry? Maybe something that you might want to see more of from statements. So IBM publishing more videos or materials about any specific technology, maybe that you want to see then tied into the education. So I don't know, pervasive encryption could be tied into cybersecurity classes.
My subject specialism is always cybersecurity, digital forensics. I've been studying that since 2010.
Yeah,
back in college. So I'm always going to say that as an answer. But I think what surprised me the most was we had a student last year who I brought back an amazing level of detail to the classroom about how payment systems work with the mainframe. And actually, I think the most inspiring thing I learned from that was, and it would be lovely to see more resources that I could use in the classroom that says, right, here's a technology that your textbook says may be dead in some older textbooks. Here's how it's still used today. Here's how it's impacting your life. It's then branded with IBM or Vitali or the Mainframe Society, whoever brands it, whoever provides that content, or whoever guest speaks. I don't mind everyone winning from a bit of marketing.
Yeah.
I don't mind, and the students don't mind either. They don't mind a shameless push on marketing because they feel they're getting something from it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think what I would like to see more of is that almost relatable side of it.
Yeah.
That not just this is a technology that you want to learn about. This is how it impacts you in the real world. You and I both know that sports teams in motorsport might choose to use this technology. And as soon as I explain that to students, they're like, oh, really?
Yeah. As soon as you give the context, and tennis or Formula One.
Or banks.
Yeah, banks.
Everyone needs some capacity to move money around.
Yeah.
The moment you can explain to them, this is how it works, this is the technology behind it, it's real to them. It's not just a picture on a screen. It's not just a picture in a textbook or a word in a textbook. It's something that, back in 2013, when I went back to the society and started talking to people at the university, it was a very simple, that green screen you see in John Lewis, where when they're looking through their inventory, that green screen, that's a mainframe. And all of a sudden it's real. All of a sudden you're interacting with it without ever realizing.
Yeah. And having worked at, with John Lewis in the past from a mainframe perspective, and having worked previously at Waitrose from a retail perspective, I can say that, you sometimes forget how these two things kind of fuse. the retail industry and the mainframe industry are interlinked. You can't just pretend that, well, I don't need technology because I work in retail, or I don't need retail because I'm a mainframe person.
I've got someone who I know very well from my university days, and they work for a bank, and they are a developer on the systems that governments use to transfer money. And I talk about that, and he's using a mainframe. All of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, that friend I had in university, he's doing this, and this is how he's using this technology. That's real. That's what I would love to see more of, coming from whatever source, be it resources I could use, videos, training, because all of a sudden, that's what's inspiring to students. I find those stories, those real moments.
So I guess that kind of leads to our last question then. So we typically ask, what would you like to see more from the community going forwards? So would you maybe want to have a kind of call to action and maybe ask people to submit sort of these materials to the college, or maybe to put themselves forwards as, like you say, guest speakers at their local educational organisation, whether that's their local uni, college, maybe where they went to school even,
I'm always going to be selfish and say, yeah, we're always looking for guest speakers. We're always looking for resources we can use. I'd be lying if I said that the phrase free resources doesn't ring happy news to any teacher, because that's less planning.
Yeah.
But actually, someone coming into any college, any university, even schools, and saying, here's what I do, here's how it impacts your lives.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a monumental shift. I would be surprised to find many people. I could probably count on one hand the number of people I've encountered who don't want to do something to support a student.
Yeah.
I can count to any number you give me of the number of people who are in the same boat, don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I mean, for us, we've got that event in March. Last year, we had 76 guest speaks throughout the day, and students from 4 different departments could pick and choose. And we had students from science sitting in on a mainframe conversation. We had students from business sitting in on those conversations. And so, yes, I'm always going to be selfish and say, yeah, I'd love you to come to Bedford College, or I'd love you to come to the college group. But it doesn't always have to be that. So one of the things I would like to do is to find a sponsor for our Student of the Year Awards.
Yeah.
A simple, put your logo on, say that you're happy that this student is the best of the bunch. And all of a sudden, that's a company that a student will see and say, you know what, they believe in me.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be time given in the same way that we expect.
Yeah.
And I mean, most companies give out volunteering days. It doesn't, yes, don't get me wrong, charities are very worthy causes for those days. But those volunteering days, a lot of companies are quite open about education being part of that policy.
And I think, a lot of people say, I only get 2 volunteering days a year. But actually, a lot of people don't even use all of the, all those 2 days. They might have a half day here and a half day there. They've still got maybe another half day or longer to use. And like you say, actually, if you ask a lot of companies, can I have an extra half day off outside of those 2 days? Because it's, I'd love to talk about this company, my employers to say the school I used to, study at. Actually, like you say, if you're creating a talent pipeline, it's probably in that company's interest. So they might even make an exception to that rule.
Especially if you say, and if the marketing team join,
yes,
they're happy to take some photos.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's a working day. It's not a volunteering day.
That's it. And I think, I'm very privileged in the company I work for Tali. They've supported the air cadets that I teach, and they've bought sort of STEM materials, and we've taken photos of not only the kind of the items, but the whole building process, and sort of getting to showcase that company cares about those values. And I think a lot of these companies have these kind of corporate social responsibility values. And so if you ask them, please, can we, sort of, I guess, follow through on that and actually I don't want to be cheeky and say put you anywhere your mouth is, but if you can give us that time off or that little investment, it's worth it for your recognition and for the students.
I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking about it now and thinking about those that might be abroad, might not be able to do the same level. I mean, we have companies donate gifts, their marketing cabinet sometimes for the prizes, for student prizes, for competitions. But actually, maybe the solution for those individuals is maybe together we look at some kind of feed of a day in the life of.
Yeah.
What does it look like? What can I share? Kind of short videos that I can show a student in the classroom, and it might only be a 10-minute video, but all of a sudden it's a reusable resource.
Yeah. And I know I've done one of those for, I think it was for IBM Z Skills Fest last year, 2024. And then I've shared that video with students from, I believe it's Ghent University or Ghent. I might be pronouncing that wrong, but in Belgium. And the students there were really receptive. They then said, that was really good, but it's only like a 2 or 3 minute video. Could we have a call? Schedule a call. So then I spent some time on like a Friday evening after work, and my partner's dinner, she's waiting for me to come down, but I was like, I want to help these students, and I might not have the chance to do so for some time. They might not be busy with studies for some time, and I just said, like, this is worth the time. I'll be late for dinner, it'll be cold, but it's worth it.
100%.
And I think hopefully there'll be more people out there who, like you say, they do want to do it, they don't know where to start, but
definitely
we'll get them there.
I definitely think it's a case of I could probably count on one hand the people I've met who just, for their own reasons, won't help education. For their own reasons, and I don't judge them for that. But everyone I speak to that does just doesn't know where to start.
Yeah. It's a learning process, but
absolutely,
we'll get them there between Mainframe Society.
I'm never ashamed to say what I want.
Yeah, and I think as long as people are willing to listen and say, actually, this is what they want, can we deliver that? Then the conversations were already started.
Yeah,
maybe not directly one-to-one, but
and negotiate. I might ask for something that's too much. So then, within the scope of that, what can you?
Absolutely,
which ties back in with my whole point earlier.
I think this has been a fantastic conversation about how to kind of nurture the kind of the pipeline of aspiring mainframers, students who want to learn more about this space, and and even maybe those who don't, they might be biomed students, or they might be I don't know, they might be interested in meteorological, but there are I don't know, sort of weather service stations that might use mainframes, and there's going to be, say, hospitals and healthcare organizations that use mainframes. So there's actually a lot that can bring us all together.
IT has long gone past the isolation phase.
Absolutely.
And this was my entire master's subject. This was looking at how can other subjects fulfill gaps in the cybersecurity space.
It isn't my IT or your IT, it's our IT ultimately, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think this has been, just a remarkably insightful conversation, and I think it's great that we've got this kind of call to action, so that if there's any viewers who are listening, any audience who are listening, they hopefully will, either contact yourself or maybe their local educational site, and hopefully get that ball rolling. We'll get more.
Absolutely. I'm always going to be selfish and say come to us, but yes, anyone. Well, any educator provider in your local area, especially if you used to study there, all of a sudden you're going back and.
Yeah, I mean, well, I can personally attest. Say the Bedford's College Group's Student Development Day was remarkable for the last 2 years that I've attended, and I'll be damned if I don't attend again, because it's worth it.
It'd be great to have you again.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I say I'll put the request in with the boss.
We've got the date already.
That's it. Yeah. But yeah, I guess we'll wrap up the episode there. I want to say a massive thank you, Dan, for attending today,
and thank you for having me.
Quite far, and it's been a great conversation. I appreciate you putting up with my kind of it's not floral this time, but my kind of more casual shirt. I've just got back from Amsterdam, and I'm going to be going to Orlando later.
I'm jealous.
So this is it. I can't say it's a holiday, but I'm going to try my best to enjoy the experience and
enjoy it for me, who's just gone back into the classroom.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that if they say, oh, you should be hard at work now, and I'll say, well, I've got a request from Daniel to enjoy it.
So. Yeah, there you go. And thank you for having me. It's been great.
Pleasure. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And there's every chance that the next few videos are going to be recorded while we're in Orlando. So look forward to that. A change of scenery. Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye bye.